developers, in my experience, are naturally skeptical. And certainly that's true when it comes to AI, right? And then you throw in the fact that there's all this conversation about how their jobs are going to be replaced by AI, and that can create a very uncomfortable culture, right? I think about it even on a different scale, like when cloud came out, right? Everybody was worried about losing their job or they were just skeptical that this isn't going to work. And I think that it's a little similar with AI. I think many people in many different industries had that oh crap moment. And I think you saw a lot of people in businesses, you think SaaS, think other community sites, had this oh crap moments. Oh, we've got to release something. We've got to have an AI solution.
Yeah.
And you saw this proliferation of AI tools. And talking with other CTOs to CIOs, et cetera, one of the mistakes I think almost everybody made, which is so fundamental, is we focused on delivering AI solutions, not solving user problems or customer problems. We were solving for, we have to have AI.
Creating great products isn't just about product managers and their day-to-day interactions with developers. It's about how an organization supports products as a whole, the systems, the processes, and cultures in place that help companies deliver value to their customers. With the help of some boundary-pushing guests and inspiration from your most pressing product questions, we'll dive into this system from every angle and help you think like a great product leader. This is the Product Thinking Podcast. Here's your host, Melissa Perri.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Product Thinking Podcast. Today, I'm excited to introduce Jody Bailey, the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Stack Overflow, the world's largest online community for technologists. Jody is at the forefront of AI integration and product strategy, uniquely positioned to discuss how he's managing rapid technological advancements while nurturing long-term trust within the community. Let's talk to Jody and dive into how Stack Overflow is navigating this new complex space with AI taking the forefront. Welcome to the podcast, Jody.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. So I am very excited because Stack Overflow, I feel, is a pretty common thing that if you worked with developers, you know about it. I have been on Stack Overflow to look up questions on how to develop things better when I used to toil with HTML and CSS, which is the bane of my existence.
I don't think you're alone.
Yeah, no, definitely not alone. I think nobody really likes CSS. Happy about that. But how did you end up at Stack Overflow, Jody?
Oh, that's funny, actually, because I was prior to this, I was at AWS. I was there for a few years, and I had actually decided to step down, either retire or take some time off and just, relax or focus on biking or do something different. And I got a call from a recruiter, and obviously a lot of us get those calls, and you just say, thanks, I'm not interested. And they said, Stack Overflow. And so, no, I'm not interested. Just talk to the CEO. And I talked to the CEO and had a really good experience. And then I talked to the former CPO. And Stack Overflow, as like you mentioned, as somebody having been in the industry for a while, near and dear to my heart, right? And so the idea of being able to participate in Stack Overflow and give back to the community, to the technology community, and prior to that, I was really focused on tech ed spaces. So I was at AWS in the training and certification, then Pluralsight before that. And so it just seemed like a natural fit. And I came over originally as the Chief Technology Officer. There were a lot of things there that I thought aligned with my experience and things I could do to help. And so it just seemed like an exciting opportunity. And my retirement lasted, I think, maybe 2 months. And I actually started with the company offsite a few weeks before I even started. So that's how I ended up here.
I think Stack Overflow is such an interesting company in these times too, because a lot of the community turns to it to ask questions about development. And now with our large language models and Claude and your ChatGPT, a lot of those questions are being answered there. I'm curious, what does Stack Overflow look like these days, and what makes you really excited about the business there?
Yeah. So it's interesting because thinking back to when I joined and thinking about today, a lot's changed, right? With the advent of generative AI, which a little over 3 years ago was more of a pipe dream than anything, The job that I have has evolved quite a bit. How people think about Stack Overflow, how they use it has evolved. It's still one of the top places developers go to get answers. What we see, though, is a lot of the easy answers, the quick things, people are able to get those through generative AI, through the different large language models, through coding agents, etc. And they're fast answers. It's easy to get them. And they don't have to worry about asking a question in a public forum. It's much more comfortable. It can be intimidating. We've all seen the memes of asking, a question on Stack Overflow. So, what we've seen is a lot of people are getting those answers there, but they reach a point often where they're just not able to get the answer. They get stuck or they want to understand more about it. And that's where I think Stack Overflow still plays a huge part, right? How do we help those people that are getting stuck? I was having a conversation with a senior CTO recently, and we were talking about this and how oftentimes when you're vibe coding or using the agent tools, you get to a point where it's like you're almost there. Maybe you're stuck on something, you're not quite sure. And I was talking to him. I said, I think Stack's a place where we can help with that. And he said, when I get there, I just reach out to my network and ask somebody. I said, yeah, but you've been at this for over 20 years. You have a huge network of people. What do you do if you don't have that network? And that's where I think Stack Overflow comes into play. And that's both on the public side as well as within businesses, because I know you work a lot with large organizations. In large organizations, people don't know everybody, and it can be intimidating, and knowledge is distributed all over. And creating that Q&A and community aspect can really be beneficial.
That's really cool. I didn't know that Stack Overflow had a solution for internally in companies. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's very similar in terms of the question and answer. We've got some capabilities that are targeted more towards enterprise. We do things like we want to discourage any sort of negative feedback. So it's not so much downvoting as more, yeah, this is good. We also help identify subject matter experts, et cetera. And one of the things that we're working on right now that I'm really excited about is this idea of being the trusted knowledge layer. We see with the dev survey, which results just came out recently. So, folks that are interested in the dev survey should check it out. But we see 80% of developers within businesses are adopting or using AI tools. And one of the things that those AI tools leverage are the large language models, which are largely built on using Stack Overflow public data. And that's really useful and valuable as people are working through things. But within a business, you have proprietary ways of doing things. Those aren't in the large language models. They're not in the coding agents. So how do you empower the people with that information? And then as within businesses and organizations, documentation lives all over. There could be multiple versions. Oftentimes as soon as it's written, it's out of date. Nobody maintains it. So what we want to offer is that trusted layer, right? So what we look at doing is ingesting a lot of that information, turning it into Q&A, questions and answers, to make it really easy to understand and process. But then we're also able to identify subject matter experts in the organization. When we import that data and convert it, we also calculate a confidence score, right? Is this something, is it new? Is it from a subject matter expert? Are there multiple copies? And then we can route that to appropriate people, make it visible for people to say, yes, this is good, trust it or not. And then within the Stack internal product, we have that information, then serve that up through a MCP server so that it can be automatically ingested and used in whatever AI tools they're using. So that's something we're really excited about. We're in the early stages, working with a handful of customers to pilot and work out the kinks, but really excited about the opportunity there.
That's really cool. When you were thinking about introducing this idea, what signals from customer feedback were you looking at to say, hey, this might be something for us? How did you think about that strategy and how it plays into Stack Overflow?
Yeah, great question. There's a couple things. One, since joining or taking over product, really been focused on outcome-driven roadmaps and really shifting the focus from let's deliver a bunch of stuff to let's focus on the outcomes. And then also borrowing from Teresa Torres, the continuous discovery and all those things. So that's one aspect. But we've had this internal product for a while, and one of the challenges has always been what we call the empty stadium problem. And that's the idea that, yeah, having Stack Overflow, this huge, vast wealth of knowledge is really useful. But what if you're starting from scratch? And we've had different programs. And one of the benefits of the advancement of generative AI and others is that it makes it easier for us to ingest that data and translate it. So one, it's we've had this demand from users and customers for a long time. And then as we have these discussions with developers and using the tools, we learn where they're getting stuck. And then the advancement of technology and being able to apply those. So that's how we landed in that particular spot.
Yeah, when generative AI first came out and you saw people like turning to Claude and to ChatGPT to ask their questions, was there ever like a oh crap moment? What are we going to do? How do we think about positioning ourselves?
I'd be lying if I said no. I think many people in many different industries had that oh crap moment. And I think you saw a lot of people and businesses, you think SaaS, think other community sites, had this oh crap moments. Oh, we've got to release something. We've got to have an AI solution.
Yeah.
And you saw this proliferation of AI tools. And talking with other CTOs, CIOs, et cetera, one of the mistakes I think almost everybody made, which is so fundamental, is we focused on delivering AI solutions, not solving user problems or customer problems. We were solving for, we have to have AI. And I think a lot of different companies did that. And we had an experiment with that. And some good things came from it, but we also spent a lot of time doing things that really didn't bear fruit. And I think it's just one of those reminders to always focus on solving problems for your users or customers and not to just focus on the shiny object.
If I could go back and just replace the word agile and escaping the bill trap with AI, it'd probably be the same exact book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your dev team is shipping faster than ever, but your tools, they are still stuck in 2012. Monday.com's dev platform changes that. With Monday Dev, you get fully customizable workflows, real-time visibility across your development lifecycle, and seamless GitHub integration without admin bottlenecks slowing you down. Whether you're working in the platform or straight from your IDE, Monday Dev keeps your teams aligned, focused, and moving fast with AI-powered context built in. Go to monday.com/dev and see how your team can build without limits. But I see that mistake a lot. And the one thing that is interesting to me about the business model that you're talking about with Stack Overflow and going forward is it sounds like you are looking at how do we position ourselves in this AI world, right? Like we see this user behavior where it's turning now to LLMs to ask easy questions. Where are we strong, right? What's our unique value proposition? Like where do we
Exactly.
shine? And you mentioned that there's a part too with Stack Overflow where you're looking at data licensing too. How do you think about that with the AI tools?
Yeah, so it's one of those double-edged swords, right? Obviously, from a revenue perspective, it's been really fruitful. At the same time, we're also fueling the engines that reduce the traffic to our site. The things that we're focused on, like you said, from a strategic perspective, you always go back to what are your core strengths, right? What can you do to leverage those? What are the things within an order of magnitude or so, innovation-wise, that leverage those core strengths and allow you to win? The thing that we believe we're good at is that human connection. It's getting information, technical information. And so we're really focused on how do we be the vital source for technologists. And with AI, I think the definition of technologist expands. So really we're thinking technology enthusiast, but naming's hard. But if you think about any business or organization with the tools that are out there for vibe coding, anybody can build something, right? And they don't consider themselves technologists, many of them, right? You think about your CFO who's building an app, right? Or your HR person, they don't necessarily think of themselves as a technologist, but we believe that Stack Overflow can be beneficial to them as well, right? So if we're trying to think, okay, what are our core strengths? Who are the core personas? How's that expanding? So we're looking at that. And then what we want to do is we want to make sure that we create a space where people feel comfortable, where they can interact, and they can interact in different ways. Stack Overflow has always been focused on these canonical answers, right? They're questions that stand the test of time, they're unique, and they've got detailed answers, and they work or they don't. And that is so valuable and so important. And we don't want to do anything to break that. At the same time, oftentimes people have other questions. Maybe it's a derivative of one of those, and we would historically close it as a duplicate. Maybe it's a homework question. Maybe it's just an opinion. And those things historically haven't really had a place on Stack Overflow. And we believe that there's a way to protect what we've always done while creating safe spaces for some of those other conversations that are important to technologists and technology enthusiasts. So as we've evolved our strategy, that's really how we're looking at it, as how do we have that walled garden, if you will, or maybe if you think of the library, the place with all information and the research and all that, but it's really very tightly held. And then you have different spaces for different types of interactions and knowledge, et cetera. So that's how we're thinking about the evolved strategy on the public site.
Have you seen like any changes lately with the advent of AI and these different personas that you're talking about between like the conversations technologists are having or what they care about or like where the topics are starting to stray into?
Yeah, I think we're starting to see some of them. And we're also looking at how do we bring more of those conversations onto Stack Overflow, right? Because historically, a lot of the conversations we're seeing now might not have lived there. So a lot of the things that we're seeing now that are new is more around just when you think about your prompt or how do you ask a question? How do you get help with your prompt engineering? That's different than a coding question, right? So oftentimes it's not, here's the code, why doesn't it work? It's, here's what I prompted, here's what I got, I don't get it, right? So I think that's one of the evolutions that we're seeing for sure.
Cool. So yeah, so not just about coding. We're going into how do we interact with technology too.
It's funny because I talked to another CTO and talking to him about their organization. And when they're reviewing pull requests, they're asking the developers to include the prompts they use to generate the code,
Cool. Interesting.
which I thought was fascinating because one of the traditional ways of doing a technology interview is walk me through how you would figure out this problem, right? Not necessarily
Mhm.
you do pseudocode or whatever, but at the end of the day, that's like what you're doing with the prompt, right?
Yeah, that's really fascinating. That's a great way to like also see how people leverage AI tools, right? Because I feel like there is a push out there by like investors and executives of use AI so we can go faster, or you should be using it to harness it. So,
Yeah.
an interesting way to assess like how people think about when to use it too.
Yeah. I'm really curious to get more information about the how much AI is actually helping people go
Mhm.
faster, right? Because you get so many mixed signals. I
Yeah.
know that Atlassian did a survey recently, and what they got from their users was, yeah, a lot more people are using it, but they're not getting any increased productivity. And then you have people saying, oh, yeah, I'm 10 times as efficient as I used to be without it. And all the signals don't lead to the same place. And so,
Yeah.
really curious to see what develops there.
Have you seen anything with your engineers or with the way that you're looking at the organization where AI has been particularly beneficial?
The I think it varies. We see some people where it's really useful. I'd say the best place so far is really that quick iteration and experimentation, getting proof of concepts up and rolling quickly. That's been super helpful. I think oftentimes it's the product team,
Mhm.
that really benefits from that because they're not as dependent on the engineers to at least create that initial version of something that works.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really powerful place.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that trend as well. I think it's fantastic for like prototyping, get something in front of somebody, get some feedback early on so that you can then iterate on it.
Totally. Yeah. It's pretty remarkable how much you can accomplish and how good it can look just with a little bit of effort.
So true. With Stack Overflow too, your community, a lot of it's built on trust, right? And you have to trust that somebody's giving you a good answer, right? Or
Right.
like somebody's not like just taking you for a ride, and you have all the upvoting and downvoting and the ways to build that trust. But how do you think about building a product that incorporates a trust? What does that do to your strategy, to the way that you think about releasing new features or adding new things and branching out into new products? Like, how do you keep trust central to what you do?
Yeah, there's so many different ways that could go there. So from a product perspective, obviously Stack is built on trust, and that's what we're trying to provide, and that's what we're leaning into. So a big part of what we try to do is always tie it back to human interaction and knowledge. I think that's fairly unique to our problem set, the products that we deliver. Beyond that, some of the really straightforward things is just being transparent about when you're using AI, when you're not.
No.
I think grounding anything that's generative in any fact or related content, providing the annotations and where it's coming from, I think is super useful. If you look at it from the other side, in terms of internally within an organization, developers, in my experience, are naturally skeptical. And certainly that's true when it comes to AI, right? And then you throw in the fact that there's all this conversation about how their jobs are going to be replaced by AI, and that can create a very uncomfortable culture, right? Or where people are worried about their jobs. I think about it even on a different scale, like when cloud came out, right? And how many of the people that were managing the data centers, everybody was worried about losing their job, and or they were just skeptical that this isn't going to work. And I think that it's a little similar with AI. At the same time, if you think about cloud and how long ago it came out, and there are still companies that are just migrating to cloud, I think that the fear that developers are going to be replaced next year is pretty, or even within 5 years, is overly ambitious or overly optimistic or pessimistic, depending on your view. That said, I think within an organization, trying to figure out how to build trust with your team is super important. I think being clear around what your intentions are, how you're going to use AI, how you're hoping to help them help themselves is important. Providing training, giving them space to leverage the tools and onboard themselves, I think is really important. Our approach so far is different than some. You see some of the folks in the press where it's, okay, everybody has to use AI. You have to demonstrate that you're using AI or you can't hire anybody. My approach is definitely different than that. I like to build the trust, have the team find ways that it works for them, and then integrate that into the way we do work.
I think with the AI replacing developers, like that's one of the hottest topics that were out there. But
Right.
I think we're so far away from that. Like maybe some probably helping bring that up, right? If you weren't doing a lot of work around stuff or a big project, I don't see the architecture pieces or the thinking through problem pieces or the
Exactly.
like the deep work stuff. I think it
Right.
can make us like slightly more efficient where we don't need as many people to help build things. But I don't know if there's ever going to be a time when it just replaces it, or at least not in the near future.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to imagine. There are times when I'm at conferences or talking to other visionaries and they'll show things and, it's easy to get swept up and it's like, oh my gosh, yes, you're
Yeah.
right. It's going to be 2 developers and 1,000 agents. But then you come back to reality and it's like, okay, yeah, not yet. I
Yeah.
don't, you see a demo and it's like, oh, wait, that didn't work.
And there's so many of those out there too. I think there's so many people putting out products and it sounds great in theory. And then you get in there and it just doesn't work the way that they
Right.
promised it.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's that hype train. And often as senior leaders, it's easy to get sucked into that. And you have to be careful not to, and to make sure that you're focusing on the real benefits and challenges and opportunities.
Yeah.
But to your point, again, talking to, I think a lot of the senior engineers get can get more value as they learn how to use it. And one of the strategies I've heard from senior developers is around, breaking down these complex problems and then just using the generative AI for the smaller pieces as opposed to trying to build the whole solution. The challenge there is that works if you've got the experience and understand how to break things down, right? But if you think about a junior developer who's coming in and trying to build something and they can just prompt up the whole thing, all of a sudden they get stuck and they don't know where to go. So I think that points to the fact that you do need the experience, you do need the people that understand system thinking in order to really leverage it. And I think if you can combine those two things, that's where you're going to get the most bang for the buck.
Looking to level up your product management career? I started Product Institute to help you do just that. Trusted by over 15,000 students in Fortune 500 companies worldwide, our 7 courses cover everything from product foundations to advanced product strategy. Right now, you can get our bundle of all courses for 40% off with code LEARN2025. Go to productinstitute.com to learn more about our options for individuals and teams. There's been a lot of talk too about how AI might replace those junior level roles, right? Whether they're developers or product managers, because it can write a spec for you. Why do I need somebody to spec out everything and put it into Jira? With the developers, it can do the little code tweaks. It can do all these small pieces, like you were saying. How do you think we ensure that one day we still have senior developers, right? Because if we never have a junior developer, we'll never have a senior developer. Same with product managers. How do you think that's going to work out in the future? And what do you think we can do now to ensure that we don't just lose our whole junior workforce, which we'll need in the future to run?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One, from a hiring perspective, I think you need to be deliberate. And that's true today, right? You see it all the time. When you can only hire X number of people, whether it's product or engineering, it's okay, I've got to hire a senior person because I need to get the most bang for the buck. In reality, most of the time, it doesn't work out that way. It's really the combination of skills that provides the most bang for the buck. I think of it as a team sport. And if everybody is the star, then nobody's doing all the other work. And how do you create that natural evolution? So I think being deliberate about it is a big piece. From a product perspective at Stack Overflow, one of the things that I think is important for us and other online education or AI tools is to help create an education process, right? Where you can explain the why and not just generate a bunch of stuff and hope it works, but help people understand how it got there, be able to look at code or whatever, explain it, and really provide that kind of information. The third thing I'd say is that I think it's important for people that want to be senior product leaders or senior engineers is that they understand the work they're doing, that they invest their time to understand if the spec's being written, okay, what are the components of the spec? How might I get those answers? Do I trust the data that generative AI is providing? Where did it come from? It's one of the most important things I think for being a product manager in product is that curiosity, right? And being data driven. And I think that, when you bring somebody on, you can bring somebody junior to use the tools, and then you have to, if they want to be successful in the long run, they have to invest in themselves. They have to understand, they need to do the work, not just rely on the outputs.
Yeah. And with that, it sounds like there's some traits to look for in there, right? You mentioned the curiosity part about the product management, but there's also this judgment piece or this poking on how to get the underlying factors. When we think about teams, right? We have our senior people there, we're bringing on these junior people, they're going to be using the tools. How could more senior people support those junior people to make sure they actually are learning the why? What should they encourage them to do? What should they be looking for trait wise to make sure that they're learning that judgment, they're learning about that why behind it? How do you make sure somebody's not just sitting in a corner typing away?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think one of the things, and it seems simple, is talking to users, right? Talking to customers, really developing those empathy skills and understanding why what they're doing is important and how it's going to contribute. I think at the same time, it's also having those conversations, going back to the connection between the senior and the junior person to help develop those skills. So I think having mentors, mentorship, all those things are super important.
In Stack Overflow, you are also the CPO. Can you tell us a little bit about how did you take on product? What does your team look like? And how do you think about managing from both like a CTO and a CPO perspective?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll back up a little bit. Throughout my career, it's always been, I would say, somewhat opportunistic, right? Meaning when I was a developer, I didn't aspire to be CTO, right? It was like, okay, I'm a developer, and then, well, how can I contribute more? And okay, I became a manager. I don't want to be a director or a VP. And then it's just always been, let me do what I'm doing, do it as well as I can, and then how can I have more impact? I can't say that I aspired to be chief product officer any more than I can say I really aspired to be chief technology officer. However, the product that we build is largely for technologists and developers. I've always been curious, or I can't say always. I'd say over the past 10 years, I've been very curious about product management. And I feel like I've worked with some really amazing product leaders that were really inspiring. And I've had the opportunity. I mentioned I got to see you speak, Teresa Torres, Nate Walkinshaw, a number of folks, and it's been really interesting. And our chief product officer left at the end of last year. And so we had an opportunity. And I raised my hand because I thought, okay, this could be a really interesting and fun opportunity. And frankly, Stack Overflow, with everything that's been going on with AI, everything else, it's really an inflection point. And the other thing about me is I like a challenge. And I feel like this is a challenging point in time in terms of how do we adapt and really serve technologists and technology enthusiasts around the world. And so, yeah, so I raised my hand and said, hey, I'd like to do this. And here I am.
That's very cool. With the mantra of Stack Overflow too, it's for technologists, you don't say developers specifically. Do you ever see product managers hanging out on there?
Yeah, especially as vibe coding's coming.
Mhm.
I think you mentioned you've spent a little bit of time
Oh,
on
yeah.
Stack Overflow. So
Yeah.
I think it's not just developers, it's anybody that's doing anything with technology, whether it's HTML and CSS, whether it's vibe coding. We have a broad range of sites beyond just Stack Overflow. It could be formulas in Excel, right? It's anything technology adjacent. And even if you look at our internal product, the Stack internal, oftentimes it's used by other groups even outside of technology. So one of the things, and it works for us, maybe not every business. One of the things I like is we can use our internal Stack Overflow to provide information about our product, and sales can see it there rather than having to tap somebody on the shoulder. So it's also a good radiator for information within the organization from the technology side of the house.
Oh, that's cool too. So it sounds like you mentioned sales being able to look at it. What kind of information do you share between product and technology and sales, and how do you incorporate them into the flow? Because that's always been one of those friction points, I feel like, where we want to lock everything away and not tell sales so they don't
Right?
go oversell things.
Yeah. And I relate to what you said very much because I tend to be a little cautious, but we're, at least within Stack Overflow, we're pretty transparent. And I feel like we've got a really good partnership with our revenue organization. And our CEO is also pretty careful not to sell too far ahead of product. So we have roadmap information, but there's also information about different innovation work that we're doing, experiments that we're running. I've used it as a way to share like what are the things I'm working on this week kind of thing. So we're pretty transparent there, but it is always a delicate balance between, yeah, we think we can do this and being careful that it doesn't get sold before before you
Yes.
figured out whether you can or not.
Have you put any like guardrails in place or structures like between sales and product to help prevent those things?
I don't know that I would say anything unique, right? We leverage a lot of the common things. So we have weekly business reviews. We have roadmaps that we share that are more public facing. And we have also internal things as well that maybe aren't as broadly advertised. So if we're running an experiment, especially if we're experimenting with different technology, we may mention it but not document it, if that makes sense.
Cool. Yeah, that does. So, Jody, when you look back on your career, you've done so many different things, Pluralsight, AWS, now you're at Stack Overflow, just among a few. What is advice that you would give to your younger self?
One of the things that resonated with me early on, and when I talk to people and as they're trying to work through their career, one of the things that I believe is, and it's really simplistic, but I used to have it like it was an article from an internal. I worked at, it was Fidelity Investments way back in the day, and somebody had said this, and it just resonated with me, and it stuck with me. And it's, if you work hard and focus on the right things, things will work out. And I think oftentimes people want to do something different. They want to get promoted. They want to have different responsibilities, and they just want it to be given to them. And my experience is that you are able to broaden your influence to get new opportunities by doing a little extra, right? And doing some of the things that you want to be doing rather than just asking if you can do them. And my advice typically is just you got to put in the effort. If there's something you want to do, figure out what it is, figure out what needs to be done, create the opportunity. The other big thing is being clear with your leadership what you want, right? So there was a point in my career where I was working at a company, I was VP of engineering, and there was a CTO opportunity open. And I was helping interview for the CTO, and I'm interviewing all these people, and I'm like, why are they not? I have more qualifications than these people. Why am I not being considered? Well, and then I finally, as we're narrowing in on somebody, I finally talked to the CEO, and he's, oh, I didn't know you wanted the job. I figured you would have said something. And so I think that's important too, right? Is if you are aspiring towards something, make sure your leader knows so that they can help create the opportunities so that they can steer you in the right direction. It takes both sides to really make it happen.
Yeah, that's a great reminder. You're not going to get it if you don't ask for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Jody, it's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. If people want to learn more about you, where can they go?
LinkedIn's probably the best place for me.
And we will put your LinkedIn URL on our show notes at productthinkingpodcast.com. And we will also link out to Stack Overflow so everybody can
Awesome.
follow the great work that you're doing. Also, Stack Overflow is running an experiment for you to check out. Go to stackoverflow.ai to see the new AI first interface and communicate with all of the community on there. Thanks again for joining me on the podcast. And thank you to our listeners out there. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode. Please tune in. Make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time.